Hi everyone, this is my video about what's wrong with X-Men 3: The Last Stand. Now, usually when I use this title, it's just because it's easy. But X-Men 3 is very controversial. I think specifically in geek circles, I think normies just like it just fine. And I was just looking up the box office, and it's one of the X-Men movies that did the best. Not even adjusted for inflation, it just did very well. But I've mentioned before, one of the things I really hate about geek culture, pop culture, is I'm always being told what to do, what I can like, and what I am not allowed to like. And I'm just like, fuck off. I will like or dislike whatever the hell I want. I liked X-Men 3 when it came out. I have fond memories of it. I just rewatched it. And especially now, in 2023, after what, like 4 or 5 years of Marvel Phase 4? Yeah, it looks really good. But then again, it always looked good. Now, I didn't gaslight myself, except for in one regard, and I will get to that. But I actually went to go look up online, like, why do people hate this movie? Why do people say it's so bad? So I found a Reddit thread where it was actually fairly recent. And this guy actually took some time and explained very calmly why he didn't like the movie. And basically, the issues people have with the movie are not about the movie. Like when you're watching it, it's basically the concept that outlined things like that. So people say, like, hey, we don't like that you killed off a lot of characters, but I'll get to the reason for that. We don't like you had a truncated or abridged version of the Dark Phoenix saga. But basically, what happened is the X-Men movies did good, but they didn't do, like, amazing. And when they kept adding more and more characters and were expected to have more and more elaborate fight scenes and effect scenes and sets and gadgets and vehicles and all of that, it just got really, really expensive. And they were very open about this at the time. They said the revenue is going up, but the profit margin is going down. Therefore, we are going to have one last hurrah, and then we are going to start doing standalone movies about the most popular characters. So there was going to be a Wolverine movie, which they had, Wolverine Origins. There was also going to be a Magneto movie. And if I remember correctly, they talked about a Cyclops movie, maybe? By the way, does anyone remember way back with Trial of the Incredible Hulk, where they said there was maybe going to be one of them that had Iron Man in it? I was just reading an old comic where Stan Lee was talking about that in the Bullpen Bulletins. So rewatching it, and especially in my mind saying, what bothered people about this movie? Honestly, it's a couple of things. And the other thing that very thoughtful person said is they made a comparison to the first two movies. And they said the first two movies are very careful. Because the context was X-Men 1 came out before Spider-Man 1. The most recent major superhero movie was Batman and Robin, which was a flop. So if you wonder why the first X-Men movie is overly serious, overly careful, it's because of the legacy of Batman Forever. And really, they never unclenched. X-Men 1 is adequate. X-Men 2 is excellent, no pun intended. But they never really loosen up. This is the third one. It's Brett Ratner instead of Bryan Singer. And Brett Ratner is a funny example of Hollywood. Everyone always hated him. I think the reason why is he literally came off like the oily, sleazy Hollywood insider that was in Hollywood movies. Like when Hollywood would make fun of Hollywood, they would create caricatures that were like how Brett Ratner was in real life. So people were just always out to get him. But his movies delivered. They made good money. And I would say this is the least Brett Ratner movie ever. Like, he's really trying to fit in. There are some shitty jokes and some actually kind of weak special effects. I think the main thing that stuck out is the lighting. The first two movies are very dark. Again, being careful. The brighter you light the sets, the more the flaws, the more the weaknesses in the CGI will show up. So keep everything really dark and really moody. It's safer. He wanted to light things more brightly, but it just made the sets really look like sets. Like at one point, there's this caravan on the highway transporting prisoners. And it should be really dark and foreboding. But they light it like it's an episode of Saved by the Bell. So like nothing works, everything looks very much like a set. So the plot is that Artie Leach from the comics, they are using him to somehow synthesize a quote cure for mutants. This is generally loved by the public and the government, but of course very controversial with mutants. One thing I love about this movie is it doesn't like force you to choose one side or the other. In fact, with the villains and the heroes, they show a wide variety of takes on this controversial subject. Rogue, of course, loves it, and she's like, where can I get this? Storm is very angry and offended by the entire concept of a cure, as she says, there's nothing wrong with us. Logan is pretty open-minded. He's like, hey, yeah, if you're a beautiful weather goddess, of course you love being a mutant. But there's a lot of these people who literally look like monsters. And he can sympathize with both sides. There's a great scene at one point where Rogue is sneaking out. And she gets caught by Logan. And she's like, aren't you supposed to stop me? And he's basically like, hey, this is your decision. It's your life. So there are a lot of characters introduced. Some absolutely fantastic, like the Beast. Everyone loves Kelsey Grammer as the Beast. They recast Kitty Pryde. Colossus is part of the team, but I think that guy wasn't really an actor. I think he was like a model, so he barely talks at all. They introduce Angel, but it's almost in a subplot. I always laugh about the part where they take the Blackbird from the East Coast to the West Coast. And then Angel, who like just got to the school and didn't really do anything. He just flies across the country and he gets there like an hour and a half later than the Blackbird, which is a supersonic jet. There are a lot of fights. There are some really huge fights. There's a great fight where Xavier dies. Spoiler, I actually didn't watch the credits. I just watched the full credits right now. He puts his consciousness into a brain-dead body at the end. So there's a fight at Jean Grey's house when they go there to retrieve her after she has awakened the Dark Phoenix, which is not cosmic. It's just a part of her personality where when she first got recruited for the school, Xavier was like, you're too powerful. So he put all of these mental blocks. That's why she had fairly low-level psi powers in the first two movies until the end of the second one. It is explained very succinctly, and it works. I know all these people wanted the entire Dark Phoenix saga. That would have been 3 movies. It probably would have taken 3 more movies to set it up. But it was really about the mutant cure and all the different factions and how they feel about it. It ends with an absolutely fantastic fight on Alcatraz Island that this movie is from 17 years ago. That fight looks amazing, and there really isn't anything like that in any superhero movies from the last 10 years. I mean, it's a huge fight. You really see all of the budget on the screen. It's amazing. There's a nice emotional end where Logan has to kill Jean when her nice side of her personality resurfaces briefly. There's a lot of just good little moments here and there. One thing I was actually making fun of myself for. So obviously Hugh Jackman was skinny fat in the first movie. And he was just like okay for a guy who works in an office and can maybe afford a personal trainer in the second one. But man, I remember seeing the third movie in the theaters and I was like, holy shit, he's huge. And then I saw him right now and I was like, he's in better shape than the second movie, but... And then I finally realized what it was. When I go to the theater, I like to sit in the first section. Not the first row, I'm not a psychopath. But in that first section that people generally don't like, I like to sit in the back row of the first section. So the foreshortening of me looking up at the screen instead of forward at the screen, of course, made his arms look huge and his head look tiny in comparison. That was kind of dumb. But Kelsey Grammer was great. A lot of great action in it. There was some stuff that was just awful. Madrox was just terrible. The effects were terrible. He was acting as if he was not in the world. At one point, he risks his life and risks losing his mutant power for a little goof, essentially, a prank on some soldiers. And then he's just smirking the entire time, but he's always smirking. And also, Magneto's faction is clearly presented as being very political. This guy doesn't seem political at all. There are some great character moments, specifically when Magneto and Xavier go to retrieve Jean when she has become the Dark Phoenix and she's gone to her childhood home. Xavier is basically just trying to get her back there, but Magneto is like a piece of shit. He's actively making things much worse, just instigating and absolutely loving it. He is relishing it. One of the great parts of this portrayal of Magneto, who I contend is 100% supposed to be gay. I know they gave him a family and oh, he misses his wife, blah, blah, blah. No. Magneto in the first 3 movies is very obviously a gay man. But they do this thing in all 3 movies where they have him be cruel and enjoy being cruel and just fucking with people. That it's like, okay, even though he's sympathetic a lot of the times, he's still an asshole. He's still a bad guy. The funny thing is, this came out in 2006, and it's very diverse before people really cared about that at all. They introduced 3 Morlocks. One of them's Asian, the other 2 are, I think, Dominican and Puerto Rican. And one of them, I believe, is trans. And this is, again, 2006. Go watch Superman Returns from literally the same time frame. It came out like a month later. You look at the crowd shots, literally everyone in the crowd is white. Cal Penn is like the only person in that entire movie who isn't white. But this was very diverse. It was really, really good. I do understand if you're bothered, but I mean, a lot of this is just budget stuff. Rising revenue, but shrinking profit margins. And they said, hey, let's build up to a huge battle, and then let's do solo stories that will be cheaper and more profitable. I loved it when I first saw it in the theaters. I think I might have liked it even better now, realizing how bad most superhero movies got. But definitely go check it out. Thanks for watching. Bye.